And I think most people who listen to our program would agree we're pretty fair. You know, I mean, clearly, Mike and I make no secret of the fact that we're Republicans. One's more conservative than the other, but that notwithstanding, we like to think of ourselves at least as being fair. Claire McCaskill's come on the program, I think would argue was treated fairly. We had David Plouffe on yesterday. I think he would argue he was treated fairly. Some would even say we treated him with kid gloves. You know, but we're not here to get in your face. Our goal in interviewing somebody is not to ensure that they never come back. Our goal is to at least provide an opposing viewpoint and let you and others decide which viewpoint they like. You know, we're not Chris DeGaulle. Our goal is not to get in everybody's face and yell at them. And that's not an indictment on Chris, don't get me wrong. It's just a different style. And that's not a style that quite frankly, Mike and I subscribe to. But, you know, I don't know if Dennis Moore's heart's not in it anymore, or if he thinks he can just coast to victory regardless of how he votes on certain issues. I don't know. Yeah, but I don't think he is the formidable candidate that he was in 2002 and in 2004. You know, sadly, I don't want to speak negatively of anyone. Hell, I've said it on the air. Chuck Honor's campaign in 2006 was a disaster. It was a disaster. I don't know that he could have done any better. Nick Jordan, I liked him. You know, Nick's a friend of mine, but he didn't energize. And quite frankly, running against Dennis Moore in a year when everybody's sick of Bush and you've got Obama on the ballot, I don't care who you put up. I'm not going to go this far, but you almost could have put Sam Brown back on the ballot. Dennis Moore may have won that too. You know, I mean, it was a Democrat year last year. I mean, let's face it, we got our butts kicked. And quite frankly, and I said this at the beginning, we deserved it. We deserved it. And hopefully the message was taken, and hopefully something was learned from it.
But Scott, in Kansas, we actually gained a seat.
Yeah.
We actually did very well
right.
in Kansas. You know, respectively.
But
a very bad political year.
Coattails are strong, though. You're already in office in a Democratic year.
Think about all the seats.
It's like a coaster. You're just riding the ride.
But what district was that in? That was in the second district.
It was a very Democratic district.
The second?
Historically, the south part of the state.
But this is a district that Sam was the congressman from, that Jim Ryan had been the congressman from for what, 8 to 10 years.
Right.
This is a district that historically had voted very Republican.
They're Reagan Republican. They're Reagan Democrats in the South.
Hell,
That's what the deal is.
But Reagan Democrats voted for Reagan.
Right.
You know, and my point is that is a district that had been predominantly held by Republicans up until for one term by a Democrat. You know, Republicans can and should win in Kansas.
Right.
You know, but when you're talking about Johnson County, I think you're looking at a different animal. This is not Todd Tihart's district. This is not Jerry Moran's district. You know, this is different. And I don't know if it's because of all the money. I don't know if it's because of the enlightenment, if you will. But this is a district that, for whatever reason, let me touch on one. I'll get to questions. Let me touch on one quick issue. And this frustrates me, and I'm sure it frustrates a lot of Republicans. Whether you're a moderate or a conservative in this district, I would remind all of you about what Ronald Reagan spoke of regarding the Big Tent. This is a party that can hold a lot of people, and a party that can hold a lot of different views. You know, Mike Shanin, my co-host, makes a brilliant point sometimes when we get people who call in and they're independent, or you know, they're moderate Republicans, but they will more often than not go with the Democrat if the Republican candidate happens to be pro-life. And I've made no secret on the air, I'm pro-choice to a degree. And I know a lot of you say, well, you can't be pro-choice, you have to be pro-choice, you have to be pro-life, and I disagree. I don't think that's accurate. But the problem is we have a huge divide in this district, quite frankly in this state, between conservative Republicans and moderate Republicans, yet it's predominantly one issue that divides us. And quite frankly, it's an issue that very few members of Congress have any control over, if any. State lawmakers probably have more, I would argue state lawmakers have more control over abortion than members of the House. in Congress. But we allow one issue to divide us, and it's usually abortion. You know, and it's on that one issue where I get cast publicly as a moderate Republican. I'm a super fiscal conservative, a foreign policy hawk, and yet I'm pro-choice to a degree, and somehow that makes me a moderate Republican. And that's fine. If that's what I am, then that's what I am. But I go back to what Ronald Reagan said. We have a Big Tent. And when people go to the ballot box and they vote for a Democrat that they agree with on 30% of the issues against a Republican that they agree with on 70% of the issues, that's bad. But sadly, I think a lot of pro-life candidates, and I'm sure there are many of you in here who are pro-life, and that's fine. I think a lot of pro-life candidates make themselves out to be on the campaign trail in an effort to entice the base, almost zealot-like, whereas pro-choice Republicans on the campaign trail make themselves out to be what's called a rhino. I hate that term, Republican in name only. You know, I've been accused of being a Republican in name only because I'm pro-choice to a degree, and yet I voted for that guy's boss every time he's been on my ballot. I have voted for Republicans 95% of the time. Now, there have been a handful. I'll be honest, and this guy's a friend of mine, and I told him I never voted for Phil Klein. I've never voted for Phil Klein because I thought of him as a zealot. And I know Phil personally. I like him personally. Politically, I thought he was a one-issue candidate. And I thought, if you're running for office on one issue, and that's the only issue you care about, then that's the one issue that will forever divide us. And I've told, Phil and I are cool about it. I've told him I've never voted for him. And I like Paul Morrison, but I kind of regret that vote now after what happened. But anyway, I'll conclude by just simply saying, I know in November of last year I was the biggest John McCain supporter in the world, and I bought a McCain 2008 T-shirt one time when I went to see him, and I was a little embarrassed in December of last year when I would see that shirt. I'm like, I don't know if I want to run around and show everybody who I voted for. I tell you what, I'll wear that shirt any day now. I'm proud of who I voted for last year, and damn, I wish he was the president of the United States. Anyway, I'd like to open it up for questions. If you have a question about Republican politics, or I'll even just talk about the show if you'd like, I'd be certainly happy to do that. Sarah Palin, whatever you want.
I've got one. You're a Johnson County resident, am I correct? Which state house district do you live in? Or whereabouts in Shawnee?
Western Shawnee. Trying to remember.
Mary Pelcher Cook.
Mary Pelcher Cook. Thank you.
Well, that's Senator. But
Owen Larson.
Oh, in the House?
Yeah, House, State House.
Give me a name and I'll tell you.
Owen Donahoe.
Yeah.
Owen Donahoe.
Yeah, it's a gun house. Okay. So, a lot of us volunteered for a lot of campaigns, especially in Northwest Johnson County, and that was particularly painful. There was only one campaign.
Northwest or Northeast?
Northeast. Okay. I know you're more on the Northwest side, but that was particularly painful for me because I think every single, with the exception of DA and Tim Owens for Senate, every single campaign I volunteered for lost.